Ethan had always been alone. A quiet boy of 12, he spent his days wandering the empty streets of his small town, watching life move around him but never quite feeling like he was a part of it. His mother worked long hours, his father was absent, and friends were a luxury he had never truly known. Then he met Shadow. It happened on a cold autumn evening. Ethan had been walking home from school when he noticed a dog, thin, scruffy, and shivering, huddled near the steps of an abandoned bookstore. The dog's fur was a mix of black and gray, matted in places, and his eyes, a deep golden brown, watched Ethan with both caution and curiosity. Ethan hesitated before crouching down. "Hey there," he murmured. He reached into his backpack, pulling out the remains of his sandwich. Slowly, he extended his hand, offering the food. The dog sniffed the air, then cautiously crept forward and took the sandwich. He devoured it in seconds, his ribs visible beneath his fur. Ethan smiled. "You must be starving." For the next few days, Ethan returned to the same spot, bringing food and waiting patiently. Each time, the dog grew braver, inching closer, until finally, on the fourth day, he let Ethan touch him. His fur was rough, but underneath was warmth, a living, breathing presence that Ethan had never felt before. "Shadow," Ethan whispered. "That's what I'll call you." From that day on, Shadow was his. The dog followed him home, curling up at the foot of his bed. In the mornings, Shadow walked Ethan to school and was always waiting for him when he returned. For the first time in his life, Ethan had a friend, someone who was always there, who didn't judge or leave. Weeks passed, and their bond grew stronger. But happiness, Ethan knew, never lasted forever. One afternoon, as he and Shadow played in the park, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Shadow's ears perked up, and his body stiffened. A man stood at the edge of the park, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a worn leather jacket. His eyes locked onto Shadow. "There you are, boy," the man called, striding forward. Shadow let out a soft whine, his body torn between staying and going. Ethan's stomach twisted. "Who are you?" he asked. The man stopped a few feet away. "His owner," he said. "I've been looking for him for months. His name's not Shadow, it's Duke." Ethan's heart pounded. "That's not true. He's mine. I found him." He was alone. The man sighed. "He ran away when we moved. I searched everywhere, put up posters. I thought he was gone for good. But he's my dog." Ethan looked down at Shadow, who was staring up at him, his tail wagging hesitantly. He didn't want to believe it. He couldn't. "You're lying," Ethan whispered. "You abandoned him." The man pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. He turned the screen toward Ethan. There in the images was Shadow, clean, well-fed, playing in a yard. The man knelt down, his voice softer now. "I loved him. I still do." Shadow took a step forward. Ethan clenched his fists. "No, he's mine. He loves me." Tears burned his eyes. He had never fought for anything before, never had something to lose. Shadow had filled the empty spaces in his life. How could he give him up? The man hesitated, then nodded. "I can see that he cares about you. Maybe more than I deserve." He took a deep breath. "But I can't leave without knowing he's okay. Can I visit? Just to see him?" Ethan wiped his eyes. He looked down at Shadow, who pressed his wet nose against his palm. Shadow was his family. But family, he realized, wasn't about keeping someone trapped. It was about letting them choose. With a deep breath, he nodded. "Only if Shadow wants to see you." The man smiled, not victorious, but grateful. "Fair deal." Ethan knelt beside Shadow, whispering, "No matter what, you'll always be my best friend." Shadow wagged his tail, licking Ethan's hand before stepping toward the man. But as he did, he looked back, as if to say, "I'm not leaving. I'm just remembering where I came from." And Ethan knew, no matter what, they would always belong to each other.